Hey everyone, this is Dr. Jim Coughlin. I'd like to welcome you to a new program called Lagniappe Leadership Discussion. Lagniappe is a phrase that means a little something extra, and the purpose of this event is to every month to have a session where we bring in people that are leading in the community, in the military, or in the civic world, and just have a discussion on leadership. So it'll be a panel-based approach, and we'll field questions. You just type in your questions in chat. I'll give them to the panel member. At the end of this, it's being recorded. I'll post it and send it out. So for our very first one, we're fortunate to have a good mentor of mine, Brigadier General Joe McFall. And sir, I appreciate you coming into the Lagniappe leadership discussion today. As our first person to participate, it's pretty awesome to share this time with you. You and I spent a good year together talking leadership on the regular and some other hilarities when we were at Shaw Air Force Base together a couple years ago, and I'm really fortunate to have you. So for everybody unfamiliar with General McFall, as you can see, he currently works as an active duty service member at the State Department, so providing a military perspective dealing with our Department of State. It's a phenomenal opportunity for one of our service members to represent the Department of Defense in partnership with another department in our federal government. General McFall is a two-time wing commander, having commanded the AGAL at Ramstein Air Force Base, as well as the 52nd Fighter Wing at Spangdahlem Air Force Base. He's been a squadron commander, a group deputy, a wing vice. He has 3 master's degrees, attended the United States Air Force Academy. I'm putting his full bio, link to his full bio in the chat. But not only that, he's a pretty awesome guy. He's married to an amazing person who turns out, fun story, I think his mom helped him meet his new bride. They are fortunate, or his bride, they are fortunate to have 2 daughters, and both of those daughters are also going to be airmen. One is currently at the United States Air Force Academy, and the other one just started OTS just last week. And so, hey, sir, that's just a quick once over the world on your bio. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself, maybe some stuff that's not in your bio?
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Let me try.
What's that?
We can hear you.
Okay, good. I'm not used to your newfangled technology. Let's see about myself. Well, I grew up. I was born on Travis Air Force Base, so my dad was in the Air Force as a KC-135 pilot, just briefly during the Vietnam era, and then when he got out, we moved up to Seattle. So that's where I spent my youth, grew up there, and went to all schools through high school, and then headed to the Air Force Academy. The story about my wife is it was actually my mom and her aunt, through a weird connection, set us up on a blind date on New Year's Eve, which was probably the worst date you could imagine. But she still ended up marrying me, so we've been together 27 years. I'm a career F-16 pilot with some odd jobs smattered around, and I'll say that was something I kind of knew I wanted to do since I was like 7 years old. So the chance to have a goal that early, get into the Air Force, get to be a fighter pilot, and then all the just wonderful travel and leadership opportunities that have come after that it was a dream come true. So as what you didn't mention is I'm getting ready to retire here very soon, and it makes it very bittersweet as you go out. I got to do everything I ever wanted to do when I was just a kid, and so as I transition, it's bittersweet, but very exciting to see what's next. So I'll leave it at that.
It'd be helpful if I would unmute. I appreciate you providing that added insight, and it's pretty amazing to meet a person who had a dream as a child to fly one of the greatest airplanes ever created, and then you actually got to do it. So what is it like to actually be a young child, think this is what I want to do with my life, and to achieve it? And were you really prepared for all the non-flying things that was probably not a part of the dream as a 7-year-old?
Well, I mean, one it was pretty cool. I mean, I guess so some of my dad, when he got out of the Air Force, he rebuilt the airplane, and he went and got his air and power frame mechanics license, and then he and my mom rebuilt a Piper Tri Pacer basically in our garage, and so I think we all have like vague memories of things that happened when we were very young. But I think some of the very first concrete memories I have are like around age 4, are going to fly with my dad, and I just like doing it. And so, growing up, we'd go to air shows and things like that, and I just always thought, oh, man, that's cool. And so I knew, like, as I was, got higher into high school and stuff, what's the best way to do that? And I decided that, if you went to the Air Force Academy, you had a great shot if you had the right medical qualifications and everything to be a pilot. And so that's what I did. So as I went into that, right, based on the question you asked, I had very, I don't know, maybe idealistic, or I just had a way in my mind that I thought it was going to go. And I'll be quite honest with you, I was absolutely miserable there. And I've told some people that I got through on pure spite. And I think, since this is a leadership discussion, it was the fact that I went there. It wasn't what I thought it was going to be. There were personalities and things that I just didn't like. But I kind of pushed through with the goal that I had in mind. With you're not going to beat me with this. And as I look back, right, and as I've been able to talk to my daughters, who as you noted, are both going to the Air Force, and they'll both be in aspirations to fly. I have this perspective of just being kind of bitter and not changing my approach to things, and there was so much opportunity there that I missed. It all worked out, but I look back at young cadet McFall and went, "You're kind of stupid, right? Because you didn't readjust your sight picture." And so as I came out of there, right, a little bit disillusioned with what it was going to be like, and I got to go to pilot training. The whole my perspective really opened up. Just great leaders, great people that I work with, doing something that I always wanted to do, and I actually really enjoyed it. And so, but that doesn't. You can only do that for so long in this, active duty before you have to kind of make the swing to, what is it now that motivates me? And for me, it was. I had an interesting assignment as a working in what is now Cyber Command, back when it was a JFCC NW, and it was just it was non-flying, right? But it's all about the people, right? And the fact that you could, even as a major or a young lieutenant colonel, if you had a good idea and you had a great team, you could inspire them and motivate them and lead them to do something more, right? To make the organization better. And so, from my longest term goal in the Air Force was always to be a flight commander in a fighter squadron when I was like a lieutenant. And that happened like within 6 years. And after that, it just became I'm sitting at a job, I'm doing good things, and I look at the next level up there and stuff that I thought needed to change, that we could do better, but I just wasn't in the right position to do it. So I said, man, if I just had that next job, or if I just had that next rank, I could do some good things. And then you get to that next job or that next rank, and you're able to affect some of those things, but you go, man, if I just had that next job or that next rank, I could do some more things. And so that is what has kept me going all this time. So when you talk about non-flying time, it's just working with fantastic people, getting the opportunity to lead and motivate them, and then to be led and motivated by great people has been just fantastic for me. So hope that answers your question.
Yes, sir. And I appreciate those insights. Obviously, you talk about a different level of transition throughout your career, right? So you have an expectation management. Maybe sometimes it didn't meet your expectations, and you kind of captured that. Sometimes you can miss out on opportunities due to the bitterness to not meeting expectations. That kind of transitions me to, as a leader, what is your perspective on people, which you articulated as important, and the mission? How do you dissect those two aspects of what it means to be a leader?
So, I think what every command or base, has some form of talking about people and talking about the mission in their mission statement, right? For me, I guess it may sound silly, but I take the mission for granted, right? The mission is something that is why we exist in the military, right? And so it has to be done. And so we're always, we want to be successful in the mission, whatever it is, or keep getting better at doing the mission, right? If you're talking about deterring folks or being ready, but the people part of that, right, is you can't do any of that mission without people that are motivated, well trained, well led, properly resourced, and so as a leader, right, I think that's where I've spent the most of my time. Is so you have to clearly articulate what the mission is and why it's important, and kind of, if you have a left and right lanes and a goal in mind of how to get there, but if you can't convince all the people that work for you and with you that's a good thing, right? Now you can do that through fear, sarcasm, and ridicule, but the best way to do it is to inspire people, right? I mean, inspire is a very strong word, but to motivate them to be genuine in your passion for what everyone's doing, and when they bring you issues and problems or great ideas, to show that you can react to those, and then levy the proper praise when they do that, and when it's a giving feedback thing, right? If people aren't doing the right things, right, it's always I'm kind of getting off track, right? But showing empathy, right? Someone, there's very few dirt bags out there, right? But there are people that maybe have less aptitude or less ability. But I think as much as you can, focusing on the individuals, the people, right, and bringing out the best of them is what makes the mission happen. So that's my perspective on that.
Yeah, that's excellent. I think one of the key points you pointed out was empathy, and that leads us into a question. One of the first questions we got in chat, which is, considering the challenges that leaders are facing post-pandemic, and you led in a large organization as the pandemic hit, or as you would say, you were the assistant to the deputy commander, the Dwight Schrute, if you will, of the organization. But the question is, what would you give to leaders, regardless of industry, in taking their leadership to the next level post-pandemic, right? So we went in an environment where industries had to make a decision on the future of work. How important is it to have our teammates in the work center dealing with this when they have things going on? There's a global pandemic. Nobody in our lifetimes experienced that, at least in the United States. And so how do you couple that with empathy? How do you tell people what it's like to lead now, having led an organization through the most active time?
Yeah. I mean, as you well know, Gumbo, our time at AFCENT was a bit different in the fact that everything was done mostly on classified systems, right? And so we never really had a very huge telework posture. But so there's that one perspective, but I also transitioned up to this job here. First time I walked into the State Department, I swear there was tumbleweeds going down the hallway of a pretty big building. And so, I think it was tough at first, right, to kind of find how. So can you actually do the mission with people spread all across God's green earth, whether it's on a classified or unclassed system, right? And I think through this last couple of years, I mean, we've proven to be fairly effective. I mean, look at what we're doing right now, right? You can connect people from all over the place with visuals. That's a beautiful picture of the Golden Gate Bridge, by the way, behind you, and actually, have discussions, share work pieces, all that stuff. So I think, that it was a driver to have technology respond pretty rapidly to the needs of organizations. So if you're kind of, I guess I would say, old school leadership or whatever, like both of you and I have talked about, is I think for folks like me, it is tough to be a hands-on person, right? Where I like to go when I have a little bit of time and go just talk to people in the workspace, right? Or talk to them after work, because, that's where you really get a true perspective of, our people. You can see productivity by the output of what's happening in an organization, but you can't always gauge how people are doing, right? Are they overworked? Are they tired? Are they super happy, right? But by telephone calls or emails or things like that. And so so that from that perspective, I think it's been tough. And so as we begin to transition out of it, right, I think what you have is a lot of people in senior leadership positions that can't wrap their head around the fact that, okay, we did it, we made it work, but now we got to go back to the way it was, because that's the way I've always known. So personally, right, for the folks that work for me, right, I had to kind of let that go and find different ways to check on them, right? And so if we're doing a Teams meeting or something like that, I want to have a small staff that works directly for me, but I encourage them to telework, right, when they can. But it's just having a conversation about something that doesn't have anything to do with work, right? How was your weekend, right? Tell me about what you're doing, or oh, I heard your kid got sick, right? So just that kind of stuff, so that people know you're genuine, you care what's happening to them. So I think as we now go into this arena, so as if you're in those leadership positions, or you're coming into them, is thinking about the ways that you can be genuine. You can actually, as best as you can, understand the pressures or the life situations that are facing people, and be able to respond those when you may not be able to go in and put your hand on someone's shoulder and say, "How you doing, man? How you doing?" Guy or gal. And so it's a challenge, right? But I think it's one that, if you look at the flip side, there's a ton of people out there that love this, right? They love the fact that they can, be in a polo shirt talking to people, and maybe, no one knows if I'm wearing pants or not right now, right? I am. So for a lot of people, right, this is a really good thing. And so if that makes people happy to work from home, work remotely, so they can, log off a meeting, do the work they need to, and go make a grilled cheese sandwich, right? And play with the dog. That's just as important from a lifestyle standpoint. And so if we can, as you're working through these things, whatever industry it is how do you balance the two, right? So that the organization is producing what it needs to produce, it's getting better. But in that important recipe is the health of the folks that are doing it, right? And so it's either it can be a mix or it can be finding ways to do it remotely. So I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, and I appreciate that perspective. And I just want to state that the Lagniappe leadership discussion is a pants necessary zone. So I'm glad that you reinforced that. Also do need to say, I forgot to say this at the outset, that the opinions of the participants are our opinions alone and not representative of the federal government, and in our case, the Department of Defense or the Department of State. So sir, one of the things you talked about is understanding your people, and you talked about some of the leadership challenges that you're working through in your new job, and some of the ones that you had last job, and I think that transitions nicely to, can you give some examples or one or two of where you feel like you've had some leadership success, and maybe if you're comfortable, where you've maybe fallen short as a leader?
Yeah. Gosh. So okay, I guess I'll just pick one or two, or one of each, and then you can press me harder if people want more. So I think that one of the ones I'm most proud of is I was a sitting wing commander at Ramstein. The guy that was at Spangdahlem, where I'd been the vice commander, he wasn't there when I was there, but he ended up being relieved of command. Whole different story. But because I had been there as the vice, and it's a very community oriented place where people know you, and it's an important part of the youth safety relationship. They sent me back there as the wing commander, and so that be a whole other discussion of how you go into an organization that has had a leader that wasn't cutting it, and then what do you do to recover and move on. Bottom line though is there was a lot of stuff that was pretty easy to fix in the first couple months, and most of it was just being a good dude and talking to people, and talking to our community partners and things like that. But then there was this undercurrent of these toxic relationships that had built, like some in the senior NCO corps, some at the group commander level, some at the squadron commander level. And so when I thought, oh yeah, we're humming along, right, then these things started to bubble up from the surface, or to the surface. And so to be able to recognize those and kind of attack them head on, one by one, it took some effort, but I would say by about the 9-month point, we were humming right along, and so when I left, it was, we'd won the Installation Excellence Award. Several squadrons had won Air Force level awards that we deployed. A squadron brought them back. We moved a squadron down to Aviano, so by I guess by my OPR and getting a push for GO, it was highly successful. And so and all along in there was a lot of I'd give a shout out to my wife, who is probably the bigger reason why I've ever been promoted anything, because she puts as much time into the community and the spouse side of it as I did into the mission side of it, and so I think as a team we were super proud of that. From a failure where I haven't done what I really wanted to do, I give you the job I'm in right now, right? So we said this is, kind of this is personal views, right? About 5 years ago, the general that had my job was a deputy assistant secretary and had a substantial portfolio of what our bureau does. And there was a certain person in leadership in the bureau from the state that was not keen on having military people be in leadership positions in the State Department, even though there's a whole exchange MOU that governs this thing. And so it was basically blown up, right? And so all the stuff was moved around. So the two FOs that were before me, so both Navy, came in to a kind of a nebulous, you're the senior military advisor, but what that really meant, no one had actually codified, right? And I'll be honest with you, I mean, I'm surprised that it languished so long. So when I rolled in, I'm like, there were certain things that I could do for the military folks that were working there, and building that network and promoting that. So I'm happy that we've done that over the last 14 months. But from day one, well, I gave it, my things kind of look for 30 days, how things are running, and then kind of go after what I think can be done better. And so I was on our bureau leadership for the last 13 months, really trying to say, if you value this position, right, you have to give the responsibilities that are commensurate with the rank you have here, right, or SES equivalent or whatever, as a general officer. And I was finally making progress here over the last month, but it looks like the position is probably going to go away from all the things that I were talking about, or be downgraded in rank. So that is, I count that as a failure on my part, because I could have been more convincing, or I didn't say the right things at the right time, and so I always Monday morning quarterback myself on how could I have engaged better. In the end, it is what it is. It might have happened anyway, but I just that's one that I wish I could have made more progress on.
Yeah, I completely understand it, and obviously it's a challenge in any role when you pour yourself into a task or into something that you feel of value, and then as you step back, it doesn't make it over the finish line, and how do you introspectively not internalize, like, hey, where did I fall short, right? And so I appreciate that, and I think your perspective on the success as you went back and joined the 52nd leads into one of our questions, and it because this really tied into what you came into, right? And the question comes, what is the impact of generational differences in adapting your leadership methodology, right? So as a wing commander at the 52nd, you had brand new airmen that are straight out of their basic, coming, whether they're going to be working on airplanes or working in the FSS or the comm squadron or across the base CE. And then you had some more seasoned individuals, as you may say, that have maybe been at Spangdahlem for a little bit, whether they be GS or Host Nation partners or just military members that have been in a little bit. And so that requires unique perspectives on leadership, especially as you try to individualize your leadership, which you talked about was value added for you to getting out and talking to people. Admiral Willard used to say that virtual presence is actual absence, right? And so you try to be virtually present as you join that wing. So how did you manage leading across age or demographic differences?
Was that like a 75-part question come up?
A lot of lead up.
So I'll be perfectly honest and say I had a huge crutch, right? And the huge crutch was this, Spangdahlem is just an amazing location. And you have a community that is like almost to a person, right? There's always some curmudgeons out there, but was very supportive of the base, very supportive of the airmen. They wanted them in the community. It's beautiful, and there's stuff to do around there. But that didn't mean like some demographics, like first term airmen, right, who lived in the dorm, and it was not there wasn't like a little city or with a bunch of restaurants where you could just walk to or anything like that, right? It meant taxis or carpool and all that kind of stuff. That crutch in mind, right? It was just for me, it's about when I talk to groups of people, I kind of, I mean, I think, you'll probably, I'll one up your question. You say, what you always ask what your strengths and weaknesses are. I think one of the strengths I have is I'm really good at reading people. I always have been for the most part. And so when you go talk to groups of folks or individuals, kind of just understanding, being empathetic, like you said, understanding what their perspective is, right? So for our guys out on the line, right, they were, I mean, short on parts, short on manning, short on experience, and so they were humping it, right? But when you're motivating by saying you're doing a great job and you show all these mission stats because they're truly kicking ass, but also to say, hey, to bring back into the dynamic of the community and hey, you getting out there and seeing stuff, right? And so when we were able to give down days for performance and stuff, that's what we do to highlight, because you've been so successful in what we've asked you to do and gone above and beyond, go take the time to do these things, right? I didn't set up all these individual programs, right? But because we identified groups of different demographics that may or may not have opportunities that families could take and stuff like that, our FSS responded great to that outdoor rec where, for the most part, they were able to get a lot of people engaged with stuff that wasn't necessarily work, and within work, right? I think at all levels, people appreciate, I'm a big fan of innovation and just, if there's a better way to do something, right, let's do it. And so we encourage that quite heavily. And I had an awesome PA. And so, people who are familiar with USAFE and SPANG at the time, they did this Innovation Madness, USAFE did. And so I had a PA lead who would say, hey, sir, we want to make this video, right? And the video was definitely not something that I knew any internet trends or anything on. My daughters did and stuff, but they would make videos and I was fully willing to participate to make a fool out of myself that just, they took off, with a lot of different demographics. And so I think you need to be willing to listen to folks who maybe understand a little bit better than you, what motivates different generations, right? And then be willing to engage with them in the way that they are comfortable with, right? I mean, I went out one of the first things, right? I would go out once a week and visit different squadrons or different functions or whatever, which is awesome because they let me drive bulldozers and stuff like that. But I remember I think, I don't know when the selfie was invented, probably a long time ago, but they were semi-popular. And so I just whipped out my iPhone and said, let's take a selfie, right? And the young airmen were laughing at me. And that we posted it on the command page. And then it took off like wildfire. Everyone was saying, hey, can you take a selfie with us, sir? And so that kind of became my thing to just engage with people that was quite honestly just silly, but it was super effective on connecting people, and it was fun, and I think that's important. And I think one of the things when people have low motivation or there's a lot of stuff is, I tell folks, you can have my sense of humor when you pry it from my cold dead hands, because we're in serious business, right? But a smile or a crack at a joke to make people laugh a little bit when the situation is dire or it sucks because we're working so hard, or you're sucking rubber in a gas mask forever, right? Is it just, I think, lightens the mood and people get a little refreshed and move on. So I'll stop there.
Yeah, and yeah, as you saw, you kind of addressed one of the next questions. You talked about some of the good ways to motivate people. A selfie, having been privileged to be a member of one of those selfies, as well as some of your inner door antics at the end of the day. I could say some of those things were truly motivational, and that's a great perspective. And I think you kind of captured the important salient points, which is to understand everyone's different. Everyone has a different thing that motivates them, that can urge them on to do good things for the organization. And then, you know, you hit on an important piece, which is getting out, leading from beyond your keyboard, leading with your feet, can go a long way. And I think that dovetails into a very interesting question that came from one of our colleagues here, which is, you know, she's currently working in an environment where it's heavy telework. And so, as you hit on earlier, there's not a lot of people there. It's hard to get that face-to-face interaction. You've got to search it out. But as she highlights, you know, there's some pros, if you will, in terms of tangent development under crisis, under pressure, that comes from being around each other. It also leads into teaching some of those organizational norms that maybe fall to the wayside, such as customs and courtesies within the military, understanding the mission and vision of your organization if you're there in person, those types of things that culturally are important. And I think sometimes we hear people say we've lost that due to the pandemic, and this goes back to one of our earlier questions. And I'll say one of the challenges that I also think is some of our newer members of our organization never had that because they came in during a pandemic, right? And so they weren't there. They, you know, from a military perspective, they didn't get to live in the dorms with their friends and go to the dining facility and play intramural sports and do the work center, dorm parties at the end of the Friday, and then hang out with your supervisor, that kind of stuff, and kind of cut down and learn it. And so some of that went by the wayside over 2 years. It's not like those leaders lost it. They never saw that or never experienced that. So the question she really asks is, due to this future of work, this transition, this telework perspective, you know, we've lost some of those things that add to the culture, add to the pressure. Should we be working to reestablish those, or is it okay that some of those things have fallen by the wayside?
Yeah. Gosh. So let me give you like an analogy for like what I joke around with my daughters, right? Especially my daughter who's at the Air Force Academy. So you go there, right? And you go, oh, this sucks, it's hard and everything, right? But you will always meet someone that was a year or 4 years ahead of you, right? That was 4 years before you, that will say, oh man, it was way harder when I was there, right? And I say that to, like, my daughter, like she would say something and it's my running joke with them, like, oh, it was so much harder when I was there. You guys got it so easy, right? Because they got their cell phones back like right after basic training. But my daughter is in OTS right now. She can text and call, after they get done at night. So I say that because I think some of it falls on us, right? And our own perceptions of what we grew up with, what we value, and how we perceived the standards to be, right? So as you see things shift and morph, it may be different than your value set or what you perceive as holding up standards. So a long answer to the question, but I would say there are standards out there, right? And so sometimes it's not that people aren't upholding the standards. They very well may not be, but I think sometimes it's a lack of people who have the intestinal fortitude to actually hold people accountable. And that doesn't mean you got to jack someone up or give them paperwork or anything like that, but a simple, hey dude, you might want to get a haircut, right? We're still in the military, right? I mean, you can yell at, you have to use different motivational techniques depending on the type of person that you talk to, I think, if you want to get the best out of them. But I'll give you an example. I had, so we all wear suits to work, right? There's 98 military officers that work in the different bureaus, and they all report to their bureaus. And so, some hair gets a little funky sometimes, but one of the guys who is not in the Air Force, different service, saw the other day, and he had a small earring in his ear. And I looked at him, and he was with a group of other lads, you know, and walking down the hall, and they're like, "Hey, sir, how's it going?" You know, kind of thing. So um, I was quite sure that the Navy doesn't allow earrings, right, while you're on duty, but I wasn't 100% sure. So we had our polite chit chat and everything, and I went on. But then I talked to the senior Navy guy. I said, "Hey, man, you guys have this rule that's different than the Air Force?" And he's like, "No, sir, you should not have that." Right. And so what I did was, you know, instead of, you know, the general calling this Navy lieutenant and going, "Hey, dude, you need to get rid of this," you're just like, "Hey, just pass on through the chain that we still, you know, we are still in the military. We have standards, and so that I expect that we uphold those standards, right? We all wear suits and we're looking Gucci, right? And you can wear your funky socks and all that kind of stuff. But if there's a personal grooming and appearance thing, then you need to uphold it." So, you know, but if I saw it again, right, with the same person, you can bet that I'm going to stop them and say, "Dude, you need to lose that thing." So I think it's a long answer to that question, but the bottom line is the standards have changed, right? We just saw a major revision of the dress and personal appearance, but there's still standards. And so if you're not enforcing those standards, that's how I see things, you know, that can get slowly, you know, out of control, if you will. So, and that can be you doing it, but you also hold your leadership that works for you or your peers accountable well by saying, "Hey, why are you letting them get away with that?" And so I think, you know, it's a two-way street. I don't know that we're going lax on that. I think just as we become more diverse and more inclusive of different things, that standards will change, but they are still standards and they need to be enforced. All right, I'll shut up.
Yeah, thanks for that. You know, earlier, as you talked about, you alluded to it a little bit with the strengths and weakness kind of teaser. It's time to actually do it for real. So, you know, you talked about a approach that you just gave, which is, you know, you determined whether or not you were going to fire for effect at that time using your parlance, or if you were going to leverage, you know, a wingman to take advantage of it through a normal methodology, and then be prepared to strike harder later. So, you know, as you stated at the opening, and I didn't open the door for you, you did. Your time in the uniform will be ending very soon, and I'm looking forward to the ceremony. I think it's ironic, the location that you're holding it, based on how this conversation started this evening. But, you know, what kind of, as you prepare to transition from being General McFall active duty to General McFall in the commissary, introducing himself to everybody,
and blocking the aisle with my cart.
Exactly.
I'm gonna get one of those retired vests too. So,
but you know, being a retiree, a veteran, and then cheering on your daughters as they also join the Air Force's officers, and then, you know, as you said, aspire to fly. Although one of your daughters keeps jumping out of perfectly good airplanes. You know, sir, what are some of those strengths and weaknesses as you look back and reflect on your time as a codified leader in the Air Force? How would you? What kind of examples of strengths and weaknesses would you provide?
So, you know, I think I like what I said was, I think one of my strengths is that I can read people well, right? But because I can do that, you know, I think I'm good at being empathetic, because if I understand what's kind of motivating them, right, based on the way they talk or act, then you can find the proper motivation techniques to get them the best out of them, right? Which I think is what we should try to do with everyone, no matter what their aptitude is, right? Instead of just writing folks off. I guess from a weakness standpoint, right? But what that can lead me to is just sometimes I'm like a hopeless optimist most of the time. I'm a glass half full kind of guy. And so I can stick with the problem for probably way too long, right? Or someone who just isn't cutting the mustard, and I keep trying to invest time, you know, more than Well, way more than I should, because I know that there's, trying every type of motivational technique possible to get them to do better. And so, um, I think that's a problem for me, or I would call it a weakness. Um, from an organizational standpoint, I'm a horrible um, procrastinator, and so. I mean, I like to say if you wait till the last minute, it only takes a minute, and unfortunately my daughters have said that, which really pisses my wife off. But, um, I, I think on some things where they would require that they would be better with more time and attention to detail, right? That sometimes I've let that slip, right? And there I could go back in time and see places where I probably should have put a little bit more work into that, right? And maybe we would have gotten this result, or I would have gotten this out of it. Let's see. And then, the weakness that this one is just a one that I've always wanted to tell someone on a job interview is that I care too much. I'm just joking. So
I was waiting for a typical General McFall zinger there. Hey, so sir, we talked a little bit. Well, most of the session we talked about what it was like, your perspectives on leading organizations, which is really kind of a leading down perspective. But there's
yes.
multiple directions to leading. So can you kind of give us some advice on your perspective on leading peers, and then your perspective on what it's like to lead up?
Yeah. So, I mean, all good, right? And I think the danger of leading down all the time, right, is you get sideways with maybe your peers and maybe your bosses, right, or your boss's boss. So everyone's heard the platitudes of, understand your boss's intent, and and go 2 levels down. I mean, whatever. Those are all like nice things to say, and they're probably effective for people. But I think. Um, when it comes to leading up, right, it's a two-way street of, one you have to understand where your boss or his boss or her boss is coming from. What is their red lines, right? And sometimes you just got to ask that. You and I had discussed, when I particularly asked in one case, right, and got a hugely unsatisfying answer. And so then you just got to go yip yip yo, but and hope for the best. But I think, understanding where they want to take their organization, understanding what their red lines are and kind of what their personality is, allows you to, when you're either trying to get something, or because it's going to be better for the organization as a whole, or you're trying to deliver bad news, or whatever it is, right? Or sell yourself, is that you can't do that unless you kind of understand where they want, right? And it goes awry when you get sideways to them, and the same thing with peers, right? So, as a colonel wing commander, you have a bunch of group commanders that are colonels as well, right? And so you could say I'm the boss and do the thing where command is lonely, and it can be command lonely, right? But I think with peers, it's about trying to be as consensus building as you can, but not so much that you stymie any kind of progress, right? So at the end of the day, if people feel that are your peers or whatever, if you're working in a group, that that they can come and say, they can voice their opinions and there can be dissent, right? But at some point you got to make a decision to move out, right? Whoever's charged to make that decision, and you can be, how you receive dissent is super important, I think. Whether from a peer, or from someone that is a subordinate, because if you give the impression that you're just brushing it off, right, they're less likely to bring you good ideas, right? One idea may suck, but they may have like 3 more which are fantastic, and if you turn people off that way, I think you've kind of failed. So I think it's probably another weakness of mine. I'll be quite honest with you. I'm not really good at selling myself to the leading up, and I think that who knows, right? But I think there are people that are super good at it, and I think striking the balance between being able to tell the story of what you're doing and what's going on with and what your folks are doing, right? To people above you is really important, right? But I'm still a fan of most of your time needs to be poured down into that leading down kind of thing, right? And really, when it comes to peers, right, it's not. I think we get into this tendency to try to one up each other, but it should be how do we help each other all improve, right? I think some people just naturally have abilities and aptitudes to do things that the organization needs them to, and so they naturally rise to the top, right? But that doesn't mean that you can't help someone, work on what they need to be better as well. So, how's that?
Yeah, that's awesome, and yeah, truly, we had some interesting times together, and some good talk. So, sir, the title of this program is Lagniappe Leadership, and as I said at the outset, Lagniappe in the great state of Louisiana means a little something extra, and so I'm going to give you a couple of little something extra questions, a little outside the leadership realm, but kind of give us insight into who you are as a person as we wrap up here soon. But so the first question is, is there a book you would recommend for anybody that's on today or is going to listen to this recording?
Yeah. So I like recommend this book because it's one of my favorites in the last couple of years. So it's a book called Boys in the Boat, and it's about the 1936 Olympic men's rowing team who happened to be from the University of Washington, right? Which back at that time was West Coast podunk, right? All the big rowing schools were like Oxford, Cambridge, and along the East Coast. And so they built this program, right? And the guys that were in the boat, and they faced a lot of adversity in the Great Depression, trying to get through school, jobs, life, and then when they got to Berlin, in the Hitler era, they were put in the worst position they could be in, and they overcame all that stuff and ended up winning the gold medal. And there's a PBS documentary about it, but it's nowhere near as good as reading the book because it goes into detail on the people and their lives, what they were going through. And it has a special connection for me because my daughter, was at the university. My older daughter went to the University of Washington, and she like walked onto this team that has like a ton of Olympic gold medalists and stuff, right? And just walked on. She'd never rowed before, and she made that team as a sophomore till the very last cut in April, which was hugely deflating. But to be able to do that, and then I got to go into the boathouse where they have that boat hanging from the ceiling over the cafeteria table. About that one, so that's why it's special to me. But it's just a good book about adversity and championship kind of spirit.
Awesome, thanks for that. So next question, favorite movie?
Oh man, I mean, you throw some quotes out there right now. We were always memeing back and forth, but I really like Tombstone. It's like my favorite deployment movie. Gosh, and like I think my favorite comedy is like Spinal Tap because I've seen that a bunch of times. And then was it like I'm thinking if there's any tear jerkers that I like, but probably not. So let's just say Tombstone. That's my favorite movie.
Yeah, truly, I'm your Huckleberry. Yeah, it's a great movie, great cast, and great story. And so that's good. All right, next one. We talk about this regularly because I'm a fat kid. What's your favorite food?
Oh gosh, steak.
It's not that melty giant cheese wheel thing that you.
That's yeah, rock clep's pretty good, but I do like a good steak. So
Yes.
only when my wife says I can have one. So
Fair statement, and you can do it in the fancy van down by the river that you built. All right, final
exactly.
question before I turn it over to you, um, is how are the Seahawks going to do this year? I know that's your team. Russell's now in Denver, so how are you feeling about your Hawks?
Well, okay, so that's a good question in the fact that so I actually went on a trip with my boss up to Seattle. She wanted to see like Boeing, and we went up to Whidbey Island. But on Saturday, one of Laura's really good friends, her husband's like through his company, he's like, hey, I got tickets to their mock game, right, which is like the first big pads on practice. So we went and watched it. And I have to tell you that I'm bracing myself for massive disappointment. The quarterback situation is just not good based on what I saw. But I'm not an NFL scout, but I was not impressed. Let's put it that way.
Well, we can lament together. My beloved Saints are definitely trying a different approach at quarterback as well. So
Yeah,
we'll
but
see
it's
how
still
that
the
goes.
time of hopes and dreams. Still the
Yes,
time of
sir.
hopes and
Fair
dreams.
statement.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, so sir, this is the part where I want to turn it over to you to spend a couple minutes, kind of giving us those that joined us this evening for our very first one, and those that'll listen to the recording. What kind of final leadership advice? What kind of little something extra on leadership do you want to give our participants?
Well, I mean, to the six folks that gutted out the entire hour, I'd say thanks for that. I told Gumbo before that his first one, picking me for his first one, I could either be so horrible that no one ever watches it again, maybe like just bad enough that people come back to say that it's got to get better, right? Or somewhere in between. So I hope I'm in the somewhere in between. I just say, like, I think you can have goals, you can have personal goals and professional goals and aspirations, right? And one of those may be to be a great leader, right? But if you're not genuine about it, right? If you're not, for me, it's about having fun, right? Being in the moment of going, gosh, I can't believe I have this opportunity, and just going out and experiencing all the things that brings to you. There's hard times in that, right? You have moments where you go, gosh, this is awful. But just generally, right? It's what kind of always going back to why are you doing this, right? Is it because you want to have your name on a wall or something like that? That's fine. But I think if you genuinely love it, right? You love the rush that it gives you, and you love the rush of seeing someone that you shake their hand or ask them a question or give them a kudos, or you counsel them and they take it better and improve. Um, you know, um, that I just think the best leaders are the ones that have that special motivation, right? And that drives them, as opposed to just saying, I want to be a great leader. So, um, but applaud everyone for that takes the time to look at, read books about it, view these events, right? To go, I know I have my own style, right? But oh man, that's a good nugget, and that's a good nugget because you can always learn from everyone, and that's the other thing I think as a leader, you just have to constantly be trying to learn something new, right? Whether it's about yourself or about your organization, because guess when you think you know it all, and you may know a lot of stuff, you become ignorant, and that's the kind of leaders that we don't need. So keep striving, keep learning, and find inside yourself what it is that you love about it, and always go back to that, because in the hard times, that's what will keep you motivated. So thanks for letting me do this, Gumbo.
Yes, sir, and thanks so much for your insights. I wrote down a whole bunch, but I just want to kind of hit a couple of the wave tops. You said that it's good to achieve your dreams, as you said, from 7-year-old to flying the mighty Viper in the world's best Air Force. He said bitterness can lead to missing opportunities, and so to try to avoid that, leadership is about the people. You can take the mission for granted because you need to focus on the people, and you got to have empathy to do that. Be genuine and understand others' perspectives. Listen to what motivates, and then engage on that. And then you said, learn how to receive dissent. It's key when leading in all three directions. And finally, your final nugget, if you will, your words, is to have fun, be genuine, and be in the moment. And so, sir, we super appreciate you starting this journey off with me. It's been awesome, obviously, having had the privilege of spending a very interesting 11 months together as we dealt with a fair amount of things and that amazing opportunity and the stories we have. It's great to be able to share your leadership perspective. Thanks for your service as you are wrapping up your service to our nation here soon on active duty. You're returning back to the United States Air Force Academy where the journey started to do the retirement. I'm super looking forward to being there in person and to attend the game with you. It'll be a little bit different perspective having the college football games I'm used to are a little bit different in size. But I'm looking forward to seeing you and Laura and the girls and well, at least one of the girls up there. And thanks for your time. And I really appreciate everybody joining us live. I'll post a recording here in the next couple days, and then a teaser trailer for the next one. So episode 2 is going to feature a joint spouse couple, a chief master sergeant and a senior master sergeant that are currently serving in our Air Force, and they're going to come in and talk about the different challenges of leading organizations together at the same time and provide their perspective. And so I appreciate everybody joining us. This is Dr. Jim Gumbo Coughlin signing off, saying thanks for a little something. Oh, you got something else? Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to say on your roll-up points, right? To correct you is to say learn how to receive dissent, but also how to give dissent. That's what you have to do.
Oh, yes, sir.
Back up properly.
Yeah.
And then I don't mean take the mission group for granted, but make sure people understand the mission, and then you focus on the people. So that's probably what you meant. And by the way, when we talk about always learning, right? I've learned as much from you on leadership, Gumbo, as you probably didn't learn from me. And so I appreciate your perspective and how much you invest in this and bettering people around you. So thanks.
All right, thanks. All right, well, and thanks for the re-attack clarification on your points so that I don't misarticulate. So I appreciate it again. I appreciate it again. I'll see you very soon, and thanks everybody for joining. We'll see you next month. I'll be posting in the next couple weeks when that'll be. You guys have a good evening. Thanks.